Pastor, again, good to have you here. You are from?
Lexington, Kentucky.
Lexington, Kentucky. Now, that accent belies that you didn't start out in Lexington, Kentucky.
No.
I think you started out a little east of Lexington. Where are you from originally?
Romania.
From Romania. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about growing up. You grew up in an Adventist home, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My father was a very committed man. He loved the Lord more than I can say in words.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him praying all the time. I don't know when he got to sleep. And I remember him extremely committed to the church, working for the church. He would come from work and then go to church and do something for the church. And he would visit people, do Bible studies, take care of the choir, take care of the church, be head elder, do construction for the church, fix the broken things in the church.
He was dedicated.
When it was something to build, something to buy, he would always give up the money we had in the house. And he would say God would provide for us. And I remember this sentence, God comes first. Whatever we have belongs to God. We come secondly.
So you grew up in a culture of a really sacrifice for the Lord.
Absolutely.
And your parents practiced what they preached.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, was that the first generation of Adventists in your family, or does it go back further?
It goes back to my grandfather.
Aha.
My grandfather used to say that if we love God more than anything, if we make Him first in our life, He's going to bless us, and the blessing would go to the next generation. So he would say to my father, make sure that you pass on the blessing. And what he actually did, and my wife and I try to do the same for our children, to pass on the blessing.
Pass on the blessing, praise God. Now, we're talking about growing up in communist times, though, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so your father, your grandfather were making really incredible sacrifices because what they were doing certainly was not supported by the government.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You could not buy something for the church. The church was not allowed to buy a chair. You would need special approval that would take months and years from the government to buy something for the church. So the church members would have to donate.
Wow. Wow. So all of this work, all of this time was really at a sacrifice. What would have happened to them had they been caught doing all of these things for the church?
Probably beaten or going to prison or...
Now, let me ask you, did they have a church building to go to, or were they meeting in homes?
Oh, we did have church building.
You have a church building?
Yes. And in fact, we did build a new church inside the old church. And we worked just during the night. No lights, no noise.
Wow.
We didn't use any power tool, and we didn't use any light, so nobody could catch us. And people didn't come together. People would come separately, one by one, and get quietly inside and start working. And you would get used with the night moonlight or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And we would start working around 12 a.m. and finish around 4 or 5 a.m. And people would take turns. And they build the church during the night.
An entire church building inside of a church building at night?
At a certain point, the new walls started to be taller than the old walls. So eventually, police came to the gates of the church. We had the gates locked. So they got a, however you call it, the paper that you can break the gate and get in. And my father asked the whole church to stay by the walls when they wanted to demolish the church.
Oh. Wow.
And he talked to them and he said, if you want to destroy this church with the bulldozers, you are going to go through human flesh.
Incredible.
Ourselves, our wives, our children. And you don't touch our church.
Now let me ask this, because it was not illegal to have a church, but was it illegal to attend church or illegal to...
No, it was not against the law to attend church, but it was against the law to build a new church.
So they didn't want you expanding your building. Could you go out and do evangelistic meetings or try to get other people to come?
One-to-one, you could talk to people, but to do evangelism, no.
Okay, so you couldn't have any kind of public campaigns.
And yes, we did every once in a while, but...
Now, what was the majority church? Was it the Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church?
Eastern Orthodox.
Which gave you more trouble, state or the dominant church?
Both.
Both, yeah. So left hand, right hand, both hit from both sides. but the church still grew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So you grew up in a home really seeing people sacrifice for the Lord. When did Christ become personal for you, Pavel, one-on-one?
Well, there are a few steps, a few levels, I would say. First, as a child, remember my mother and my father talking to me, telling me stories and teaching me how to pray and how to trust God and make Him a priority. For instance, the teacher would say, because we had school Saturdays, the teacher would say, you have to come to school Saturday. So I would go home and ask my father, should I go? And instead of saying yes or no, he would talk to me and make me choose. And he would say, who do you think should come first in your life? And I would say, I think God. And he would say, okay, if you don't choose God, what happens to you? I would say, probably I lose my salvation. Now, okay, if you choose God, what do you think happens to you? Probably I have trouble in school. Now, which one is more important? I think is more important to have God. Which one is going to affect your eternity? And then he would say, what do you do with the trouble in school? I said, I don't know. He said, what do we do every time? Well, you pray. Then what do you do when you have trouble in school? I pray.
I pray.
So you put it in God's hands. You don't take it in your hands. So he would lead me through the process to teach me how to think for myself.
Yes, yes. He allowed you to work it out for yourself. What kinds of, I use this term, hot water did you get in by not going to school on Saturday?
Oh, I got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
The teacher would isolate me in a corner and had me take every day a difficult quiz that would go not just behind all the lessons, but ahead a few lessons. And if she would catch me not knowing something, she would give me an F. In that time, the grades were 1 to 10, and she would give me a 1 or a 2. Extremely poor grade.
Yes.
And I mean, she would call me names. She would say that Adventists do this and do that, all type of bad words, and make fun of me in front of the class.
Now, how old are we talking? How were you during this time? How old are you?
2nd grade.
Oh, young. So you are suffering for your faith at a very, very early age.
And I would go home crying, and my father would say, should you cry because you have a wonderful God, or you should be proud and happy? I should be happy. Then why do you cry?
Wow.
And he would tell me stories like the 3 young men in the fiery furnace.
Yes.
And he says, where in the Bible do you see them crying? And he would say, there is nothing wrong with crying. But when you cry because you are joyful, it's something. To cry because people talk about you loving God, there's no reason to cry.
Wow.
So I would go back and tell my teacher, you know what? I'm happy I believe in God.
Wow.
And she would say, God doesn't exist. We come from monkeys. So it crossed my mind, and I said to her, well, you may come from a monkey. I am coming from God.
You said that to your teacher?
She was very upset.
I would think so. Praise God. Your dad must have been a very wise and dedicated person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So very early on, you're putting it out there for the Lord. And I suspect those kinds of traits developed so early in your life stood you throughout your life. And of course, having read your book, I know that it's so. Because the Lord, along with doing a lot of miracles for you, also put you in allows you to be put in a lot of testing situations.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.